Well, hello and welcome to that favorite hour of the evening where you just sit back, relax, and we bring the issues out and, properly discuss it dispassionately as much as we can. And we're still looking at ministerial appointments, what confidence it brings to the presidency. Does the presidency just seem to look a bit more serious, without disrespecting anybody? It just looks like it's a new kind of leadership, breaking away from the status quo. You're called, your CV is read, your expectations are told you, and then you go and sit down and hopefully do as you are told. However, in all this, there are male and female in the world. And there's always been this idea where males tend to dominate, even though when there's a capable woman, they, seem to choose a man. Are there going to be enough women in this government to bring that proper gender balance, or is it just going to be that token drop, one or two women to say, well, at least we had one woman who was a Minister of Justice and therefore that's it? What's it going to be in the new governance? And we're going to look at everything. But the beauty of it is that we are going to look at it from the woman's point of view. My name is Nanansa Kwao. This is PM Express. And when I come back, we'll have some very, very dynamic women discussing what the current affairs is today. Thank you very much for staying. And as I said, I had two very dynamic women who are going to help me this evening. And we're just going to look at everything that has happened since the 7th of January till now, but particularly the women's role and the women who have been mentioned and the confidence with which they bring to the office that they've been appointed to. And with me in the studio, sat right next to me, is Dr. Jemima Nunu, who's the head Center for Management and Development at Gimpa Business School. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And then I have Kina Likimani, who's a project and a leader in the Ghana Decides and a member of the Women's Manifesto Coalition. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Kina, let me start with you. I'll start with the way in which ministers are being appointed now. First, in the past, it used to be, press release and shrouded in rumors, whether it's true, whether it's not true, and then it becomes true or not. But it's a different drama now. I don't know. Well, just your comments on it.
Well, I think that President Akufo-Addo, when he started his thank you tour, I think he'd go to a place and drop a name. So definitely that process took the kind of, suspense and everybody waiting and list and whatever. It sort of took the Mickey out of it. And then he came back. But I a part of me feels that whole press thing was then a bit too much. Because a lot of that we will hear in vetting. A lot, and we've seen some of them, quite a number of them before. So it's up to him that he's doing the way he's doing it. I like the idea that then it's not so like, oh, we're going to reshuffle and all that anticipation, but it's felt a bit overdone to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me come to Dr. Nunu.
What I liked is the seeming transparency in that the designated ministers were furnished with adequate details of their experience, of their educational background, indeed what they're bringing. The president also seemed to justify, I think, his choice. So you're not left with that suspense, or there was some rationale or explained rationale. Whether you agree with it or not, we can debate later. But at least we know why people were placed in particular ministries. We were given a kind of brief description as to what they are expected to do. And I think, for me, that started off on a right note. So before there was always speculation, oh, we wonder why this person was chosen, or does this person have the requisite skill? What is the rationale behind this? And I think the manner in which the president has done it has allayed those fears. I think personally I would have just liked it all in one go, rather than the drips and drabs that I think we're experiencing now. It would have been nice if it was all in one round, and you know, all the ministers and deputy ministers, this is my proposed team, all in one go. But hey, you know, it's almost like a soap opera now. You know, we get first part, or a Ghana movie, part 1, part 2, part 3.
Ministerial selections 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Kine, but the names that are popping up, do they exude any confidence, or, well, it's the same old crop, let's wait and see?
Well, I think that it's interesting because the whole election campaign and how the voting went, and I should say now the rhetoric and, you know, change and all that, I think that we may have expected something other. But the president is rooted in a political party with a tradition. We have known who the ranking members of some of these of some of these sectors are. We know whom he is likely to call upon. So it wasn't on the whole, on the first day, the first 13, most of it wasn't a surprise. There were some that were curious, like you know, I think it's a Dr. Prempe in education. That's curious. That's the best I can say. So I like the idea of a senior minister, though it's not clear to me. I like the idea of a senior minister. It was very nice to see. It's nice to see some of the women that he mentioned on that day. We've seen them before. We like them. On the second day, however, then it became like a regular ministerial thing of an incoming government, because now we have bloat. Because now we've some of the, so for instance, in the first day, the rationale for bringing back together the energy ministry, and there's so much to do in that sector, and it's so complex, but we have one minister. On the second day, we have 3 ministers for 3 varieties of transport itself, aviation, and railway, and that is bloat. Then we have a curious thing, monitoring and evaluation. Meanwhile, we have monitoring and evaluation in almost every department. But that, to me, that is clear that Dr. Akutose had to be given a position, because he, in the past, has been in you know, previous parliament was the minority ranking member on finance, and the job has gone to the MPP financier. So hey, so on the second day, it felt like business as usual. President picking a cabinet, and you know, so. It was curious. The second day actually was, I couldn't believe we were back here again. Now we are creating ministries without legislative backing. We don't understand the mandate. Are they going to be resourced the same as other ministries?
Regional organization?
I don't even know. So it just felt, the second day felt like status quo governance.
Let me come back to you, Dr. Nuno, on the same thing. I mean, second day, do you think, anyway, the question is, does the list bring any confidence, or does it take you back? Look, business as usual, let's wait and see.
In terms of the credentials of the people designated to the ministries, I would reiterate that they seem like a solid group. However, my reservations are similar. I think that, especially in the whole light of the change, I think the change some of us were expecting to see was a leaner government, and with lean government and more efficient. And I think sometimes, you know, given our history, you know, when we expand, or, you know, it seemed to have more ministries that seemingly have overlapping responsibilities, then we can get a little jittery. I think that the Ministry for, was it Rail Development? I believe there's a Rail Development Authority that was previously a Ministry of Transport. And even though I appreciate and indeed I agree that it is key, we really need to get our railway lines up and running efficiently, etc. But I did wonder as to why it's been elevated from an authority to a ministry. I'm a little, I think I'm prepared to wait a little, because each ministry, even though, as I said, we can argue that there seems to be some duplicity, has a specific mandate. And even though it seems now, there's a little bit too many, I'm more interested in the results, yes, if they're able to deliver. I mean, personally, I thought that even though water and sanitation,
and we have also a community water and sanitation agency.
So I think there seems a little bit of...
It used to be part of Works and Housing.
Yes.
It's now, there's now sanitation. But we have we have a community.
Is now going to innovations and technology.
Yes.
So I think that's also a little bit problematic for me. But moving forward, let's see if they work. I have my reservations. And I think also as well, we have to look at sometimes the costs involved when you're setting up a ministry, or you're even elevating an authority to a whole ministry. There's lots of cost involved. And, especially because there's so many, the government has promised so many deliverables, that this initial somewhat expansion of ministries obviously leads up to further scrutiny. So I think we have to be monitoring that ourselves.
Kina, while we are waiting and see, are there enough women now to the wait and see, or there could have been a bit more before we even wait to see if there'll be more to be added?
So now we have 7 out of 25.
5.
We have 7.
Was it?
Oh, you're including the previously?
No. Today we got 4.
No, we got 2 today.
No, we got Catherine Afeko, Cecilia Dapa.
They were not mentioned today.
Oh, it's on the list I saw. Okay, then maybe we got 2.
We got 2 today.
So we
Either way,
we have 5.
No, officially we have 5. Either way,
Sorry.
No, it's not enough. I mean, we're still sort of like begging to be included with these statistics. And I know sometimes they say, oh, we'll make up the numbers in the deputy ministerial positions. But once you start off with this number, you never actually really make up. So unless something interesting is going to come out of it, I'm not. Well, let's see what he does. But at the senior, at the top ministerial level, it's not looking.
So we have Shelley Ayuko-Boshe for Foreign Affairs.
Very good choice.
Good choice.
Very good. And you see, and also the expected choice.
Okay.
Because I was his deputy, and she has experience, and yes, very good choice.
And then we have Esla Usu for communication.
Good choice.
Good choice. We have Haji Alima Mahama for local government.
Very good choice.
And then Gloria Akufo for Minister of Justice.
Excellent.
How about Otiku Jaba for gender?
That's my worry. That's my worry. I think that Nanoye did a lot in the previous government. I think there were challenges with financing, and she managed to reach out to the international community, get people to fund policy development, did a whole lot of stuff. So that's my worry. I would like to really see that ministry, what has been started, we want it to continue. We do not want this, and it happens a lot with this particular ministry, where it's uneven. So we are not able to build upon each, successive minister's work. So, yeah, I'm a bit worried about that one. I'm a bit worried about that one.
Doc, the names, are you also worried about Tigo?
Maybe because I know a little bit. I know she's got a development background. She's done a lot of work at the grassroots level with all different types, especially mobilizing women's groups. And I think that with that kind of background and knowing what's on the ground, I think, I'm not so worried.
Okay.
Not so worried about that. I think so far, the 5 women, even though it's not enough, 20%.
Yeah.
And even, you know, the recommended 30%, now they revised it upwards to like 50%. So we're kind of bordering so far on 20%. Doesn't look too great. However, I think that the women that have been chosen, I don't think we're just chosen because they were women. I think they can hold their own. And I think that is what I also like. We don't just want token women who, oh, yeah, she's a woman, let's just pick her. These are women with solid experience, have got the background, can understand the terrain. I just wish there were more of them.
I'm going to be honest and say I want representation. Representation. Well, we're not talking about his his own stuff. I want greater representation. I just want greater representation at this point.
Well, I mean, would it actually help, or it just brings peace?
What helps or brings?
I mean,
peace?
if there's more women in the government, I mean, does it help the country grow? Or
You
just
don't have.
brings
You do not have a viable democracy if women and other marginalized people are standing outside the circle, and the circle in Ghana is populated by Ghanaian men, who, by the way, have gotten us to where we are. As soon as we should ask them the issues of whether they bring peace to include them, whether they are competent enough. Because that's what we do. What Ghana is now is actually the sum total of Ghanaian men's leadership and vision. And it isn't much, let's be honest. So it's not an issue of one, does it bring peace? We have to be inclusive. You can't have a viable economy, a viable democracy when women, young people, disabled people are not participating, are not some of the faces of the power. So it's not an issue of peace. Not everything is about peace. Some of it is about freedom. This is about freedom. This is about freedom. This is about representation. It's about inclusion. It's about justice.
And to chip in, I think people need to understand as well. It's not just every time we talk about it, and it's like, oh, gender advocates, feminists. If women are not represented, part of Ghana is not represented. We all don't move forward. You cannot move forward as a society if the majority of your population, which women are underrepresented. And I think that as women, we have things to bring to the table. There's unfortunately, and I always say this, the way in which we do politics in this country sometimes, or our mindset sometimes, can inhibit women from going to the forefront and going and running for political office. We don't have to pretend like these barriers are not there. They're clearly there. I often hear, oh, women are their own worst enemies and all that kind of thing, which I think personally is a little cliched. We need to honestly look at some of the barriers, some of the social, cultural barriers that maybe inhibit women from stepping out and saying, you know what, let me be counted. I want to go, I want to serve my country in this way. Yeah? We're now specifically talking about the political realm. What is it? Rather than saying, oh, we don't have enough women. There's a reason why. Women are rational beings like men. So what is it exactly that is preventing women from going out there and running for political office?
Not many of them made it to Parliament today, and once upon a time the MPP tried to do the affirmative active, and there was kicked, kicked against women should be out there, fighting on their own. Should they be fighting on their own, or should some seats be blocked and say, look, let the women have these seats?
We now know that without interventions, it's going to be very difficult to reach parity, and this is not because Ghanaian women do not want to they don't want to work, quote unquote, struggle as hard in the space as the men. The space naturally favors men. It's a system that favors men. Men favor men. Women favor men. So without interventions, Ghana is going to have a problem. Right now, I think we're 150 out of 190 ranked. We are struggling. And during the election time, a lot of the observer mission, this was one of their key issues, the very low representation of Ghanaian women in politics, particularly in parliament, in the local assemblies. And we are not a country that is, for whom affirmative action is like a novel thing. Kwame Nkrumah did this in one of the parliaments. So we ourselves are underperforming our own history. So it's the parties particularly have to recognize the role that women have played in building parties and in politics. So we are waiting. They are going to have to do interventions, because as it is now, we are 20-something years into this republic. We know now that if you leave the environment as is, it will just creep up maybe 2% every 4 years, and it's not a good number. It's a sad number. So we absolutely need affirmative action policies. No matter what, we are going to get there. This is where we're going if we're serious. We might as well get there sooner.
Doc, you agree with that?
I agree, because if you look at it, we have 35 women in Parliament now, out of 275, about 12.7, 12%.
Yes.
I mean, it's embarrassing. And
they make 51% of the population?
Yes. Thank you.
And which translates into 12.7% in Parliament. And I think we should all be embarrassed about this. And yeah, you did mention that there was some kind of attempt. But I think if you genuinely want some form of affirmative action, political party-wide, you need to get buy-in. You need to build that consent. You need to understand, because it was kicked against because it just came out of the blue. They didn't bring the party along in it. I mean, you know, I think if you truly, truly are committed to seeing more women being represented in Parliament, then both major parties have their strongholds. They have their seats, which they know they're going to win. Why not say that, okay, for these particular seats, we'll reserve certain blocks for women? I mean, women to contest in the primaries and ultimately go on to represent us in Parliament. Both major parties have seats like that. And if we'd have seen that very bold initiative or step being taken, I think the commitment towards gender parity would have seemed more serious. Now it seems more of a lip service than actual genuine commitment, because right now, as I said, you know, the numbers don't look that great.
Let me divert a little bit and come back. Now, the issue of send-off packages for ex-president always seem to rear its heads when power has been changed to a different party. I mean, and one of the biggest one is always the house in which I will live in, the house in which I will live in. I mean, I'll leave you there. I'll just leave you to comment on it. What should we do?
So there are two issues in this saga that we've just gone through, which is still there. One is the issue of the so-called send-off package itself, and then the second one is the process we have put in place here in Ghana. Now, I want to comment on that process.
Sure.
That we have a process where we have a committee that makes recommendations, and that recommendation is approved by Parliament. Parliament approves the President's package, the executive approves the parliamentary package. Well, that whole process that we have put through that seems to work. People don't want to follow that process, because that process recommended rent. There was, you know, so if we are going to have, and this is the problem, because we set up committees to do all sorts of things, and then we set aside what the committee has recommended. And this setting aside of what the committee has recommended, and I'm going to use the word collusion, knowing exactly what I'm saying. This was a collusion between the outgoing president, a former president, a current president, and Parliament to set aside the recommendations of a committee meant on our behalf, meant to look into this. It's a very serious thing. It's a very serious thing, because for as long, one of the problems I have had with the previous Parliament is that, you know, it's almost like we're doing some really, I don't want to use hard words, they may summon me. We're doing some really interesting things legally. Do you see what I'm saying? So from what we hear Nobody has reported back to the citizens of Ghana. In the last hours of Parliament, a law was amended. Mind you, we couldn't get the RTI to be passed, but a law was amended. A law, by the way, that we are proud of to have had, the Transition Act. We are proud of that. We all went through a process. I mean, the Catholic Bishops' Conference and people were involved in this. And when it was passed, we were pleased. We told ourselves that we have passed a law to address a particular problem, and we are proud of our transition. But people get into a room, and I mean, some very powerful people, from what we now understand, including chiefs, and they set aside, and they preside over this and set aside, it is so painful to me, because this is not what should be happening. And Parliament goes behind closed doors, and it is not a matter of national security. They shield what they are doing from the citizen. This is our country. So I don't know. I can't even like comment without, you know.
See, Doctor, so that, you see that the difficulty here is that, well, we've done everything. We've passed the law, we've written it,
right,
and it's been set aside. So what is, and we don't have the power to even tell the police to go and arrest them or anything. So what then do we do? Citizen vigilante,
well,
go to a Supreme Court?
I think, I mean, I must admit, I've been following this from the beginning, and, you know, we can't underestimate the role that especially social media
yes, well,
has
thank
played,
goodness.
has played in not only bringing this to the fore, yes, but also forcing results that they want, i.e. the people were completely against our former president owning state property, and were very clear about it, yeah? I think under no uncertain terms. Even the request was, in my opinion, wrong. And then on top of it, it seems a somewhat, I don't know what better word, like almost incestuous relationship between the executive and the legislature and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which, you know, if you know something that you're doing is right, why should it be shrouded in secrecy? I began to get a little edgy when there were negotiations around this in camera. As soon as that happened, something tweaked. And I thought, it doesn't sit well, because at the end of the day, nobody, or at least I am not here to say that we should not respect or honor our former heads of state. Indeed, I understand that, you know, afterwards by law they're not allowed to engage in work for profit, yeah. But I do not think that. I think some of the packages are excessive. You know, you've been given the recommendation of 40% of your salary as rent or accommodation or towards your, to do as you please. I think that's more than enough. I mean, the average Ghanaian cannot even afford maybe 200-300 cedis rent. And I think the package that was offered was more than generous. So I think sometimes, you know, our high-ranking members, our politicians, sometimes it seems like it's slapping us in the face, because you've been offered that, yeah? That is what the commission that you put together had recommended. And then that has now been put to the side, and what you desire is a state property. A state property that, you know, for me, it's not just the fact that it's a state property. That is a property that should have some aura about it.
There is
history. Why should we get rid of all of that?
They were sending out tweets like this. In fact, there was a series of pictures, you know, the Australia House. And there was this idea that the Australia House is actually bigger than the current. That is not the point. The point is we want historical occupancy of our buildings that represent all the symbols of our democracy. Do you you see what I'm trying to say? I mean, I am so upset. I don't know what Otumfo's role is in this, but what I want to say is that when Otumfo, or any chief, but I'm directly to Otumfo, when he occupies the stool, he adds to the history and to the buildings of Menchia.
He can't decide to keep it.
He can't decide to keep it. So he adds to it. He built his own private residences. And the value of this is that somebody else his successor, as he came to meet it. We have this history. What I do not understand, and I would like someone to answer this, is how it is then that it is okay for that to happen to Menchia, for Menchia to be protected and passed down, but yet our building should be given away. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And to me, you know,
I think the argument was that
there's no argument for
vice
it.
presidents just happened to occupy that building, but the state itself has not designated it as a vice presidential building.
Well, what we are saying as Ghanaians is we want it to be that. It is important to us that it is that. The other thing is that, look, doesn't matter who you are, you had better start listening to Ghanaians. I am not so upset with the former president, because that 1 million victory margin, that's what Ghanaians said. So Ghanaians spoke, people should listen to that margin. That's number one. I am very upset with the current government, because as I understand it, by the time the President Akufo-Addo came to Black Star Square to deliver that speech, in which he said he will protect the public purse, in which he presented himself as a certain person, he said he would listen, all these deals had happened. And for 2 days or more, we have raged. We raged, but when he came, when the first time we saw him on TV on, was it yesterday? He performed the Ethiopia and gave lots of words to his selection and ignored the biggest issue we were talking about. Now, some people feel like that whole letter was leaked because of the plagiarism. The plagiarism is a crisis on its own. But I'm sorry, the taking over a national building is a bigger thing than plagiarism. And we expected him to listen. I didn't actually expect...
You expect him to comment about it?
I expect him to have... For number one, I expected them to be all honest about it, that there was an agreement. They all kept on saying there was an agreement. But as President Mahama confirmed in his letter, and I am grateful for that, there was an agreement. And so for 2 days, telling Ghanaians that there was not an agreement, this goes contrary to Nana Akufo-Addo saying that he's going to listen. And he's going to be a different kind of leader. We need him to be that leader, and this crisis was not necessary
to start with.
I think the problem is that we've not had much communication on it from the presidency.
And that...
Yeah, and I think that is a big lapse. Because right now, you know, we've heard what the former president said. He's written the letter. We can all look at it and analyze and scrutinize it. But as of
CC who he has to see.
Exactly. As of yet, we've not heard from the current president, and I think we need to be told.
Well, I think the senior minister said categorically that he can say in confidence that there was no such agreement.
But
maybe
no, but there wasn't.
One.
But that's
maybe,
the point.
Maybe there wasn't
a
a written
verbal.
One.
No, you see, that's the thing. I don't want the splitting hairs on. If one president, if two of our leaders sit in a room and make a verbal agreement, I'm sorry, that's an agreement between two honorable people. That is an agreement. What the senior minister-elect cannot do is to come out and tell us there was not an agreement. There was an agreement. So you made let's say you made a bad decision. I take back the decision. But don't say there is an agreement. You know, one of the things about our leaders, the ways in which they don't communicate, is that it just makes us more hysterical.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm going to take a quick break, and then when I come back, the conversation continues. And as you know, it's very exciting, so don't move. Well, thank you very much for staying tuned, and let me come straight to studio. And Dr. Nino, from the nominations, what sort of a president do we have? Can we guess the president from the sort of people that have been nominated?
I think when you look at it, of course, it's still early days yet, but I think so far we seem to have a president who has chosen people who he thinks can deliver on specific mandates, yes? I think he's taken his time to look through balance, experience, educational background, etc., and try to fit people into particular ministries. As I said, there were a lot of, he came in as a president on a wind of change with lots of hope, lots of expectation, and lots of promises and lots of deliverables. And this seems to have etched out in the many ministries that have proliferated, from different ministries, which I think is the most problematic at the moment. But I think so far, the type of leader that we have seems focused in delivering on what he said he would. But yet, I think it's early days. It's still early days. I think, President Akufo-Addo has not even had one bit of a honeymoon, you know. The honeymoon has not
there
been
was never going to be one.
It's not even, he didn't even have one day of honeymoon.
No.
And, I think it's the times we're living in. I don't think any leader now should expect, even, the first 100 days, you'll get, not to relax.
He hasn't made any promise for first 100 days though, has he?
No, but even still,
he won't get the free ride for the first.
We expect something in the 100 days.
Because immediately, even from the day of the inauguration, that was it. And we're living in different times. And I think the sooner our politicians understand this, the better, because we were even told to engage as citizens and not subjects. And even more so, people are ready to critique, not criticize. It's not always destructive criticism. It's constructive. People are prepared to engage, people are prepared to participate, people are prepared to be vocal. So you're not going to get that honeymoon, yes? What I want to see is a president or a government that listens, that is responsive, that doesn't just put their ostriches, that will stick their neck out. And sometimes there might be unpopular decisions that have to be taken, but to justify, to be accountable to us. Not just, have beautiful, fanciful words, but really, when the rubber hits the road, we as a citizenry need to know what's going on, need to know what direction that our country is taking. So that's why I said, I'll give a little bit of time. But honestly, I will take President Akufo-Addo's charge of being a citizen and not a subject. I take it very seriously, and I think we all should. So,
Kina, I mean, very, very early days, probably not fair, but from the canvas, and if you see how the brush strokes are going, what picture do you think he's painting?
Well, I think that he's had great pains to let us know that he's been deliberate, while at the same time trying to satisfy all the demands of what making ministerial appointments mean. So he's had great pains to tell us that he's deliberate. I never look at these appointments, because we've been here before, where people look fantastic, and then it comes to governance and somehow it all falls apart. Some of the things that I want to see, you have this wonderful group of people. I want to see more coordination. I want to see collaboration between the ministries. I remember, and I'm making my comments particular to the MPP tradition. I remember the late Courage Kwashiga, as Minister of, I think at the time, he'd been Minister of Health and then he was Minister of Agriculture. And I think as Minister of Agriculture, convening that interministerial committee on malnutrition. So there are some of these problems that we have that really require cooperation and collaboration between the ministries. We need those things to happen, because I don't see how we're going to solve Galamsey, for instance, without such a body. So it's just not about appointing really good people. It's also about what you're going to have those people do, the coordination within them, and sort of getting them together to work on problems beyond what you have promised, because we have some other crises that are like in Ghana, Galamsey being one of them, and particularly with our water, everything. Galamsey is now, it's like everywhere. It touches many aspects of. So that's what I want. I want to go back to that. But what I find worrying in this initial list, we want, so I understand about appointing people to take particular charge of a promise, which is important. At the same time too, we want agencies, I like to group Ghanaian agencies into sexy agencies and non-sexy agencies. The sexy agencies are like, you know, the ones dealing with oil and revenue. The non-sexy agencies are really the ones that affect our lives, like Community Water and Sanitation Authority, like Ghana Libraries Board. So what I want is for him to strengthen those institutions that have particular mandates in crucial aspects of our lives. So for me, it's not good enough to say, oh, I have appointed this person to look at sanitation. I want to know how is that going to affect the work of community, because they have been good. Look, they did, and they are good at implementing projects. I'm always plugging them because they brought water to my villages. But that's important, you see. So not just like you appointed the people to be on top of it, and then when we are done, we don't see that their expertise and their brilliance and their impact and haven't impacted those agencies in a way in which is long lasting for Ghana.
Doc, let me bring you in. One position we missed out is the deputy minority speaker.
Oh,
female.
yes.
Ah, yes. But then again, yeah, we didn't really talk about that, and indeed we didn't really talk about the president's personal staff in Flagstaff House, and to be honest, I don't know much about the deputy minority speaker, Sarah Adwasafu.
Deputy majority.
Majority speaker, Sarah Adwasafu. So I can't really comment as much because I don't know. I know that she's a lawyer. I know she's been so far. This is her second term as an MP, and I wish her well. I think that's the most I can say on that. Really,
I'd like to comment on that because I'm with a group called Odikro, and we do parliamentary monitoring. And in our research, we find that the leadership, because the entire leadership, majority, minority, and all the different variations, have a lot of opportunity to speak. They have a lot of opportunity.
So sorry to come in here, but how are you able to monitor the attendance? Because apparently you can just come and sign and run away.
We use some. So Odikro is a project that monitors Parliament using open data. So there are Hansards, there are attendance records. People can even say, oh, Mr. Speaker, I was marked as present, but I was absent, or I was marked as absent without permission, but I actually sought permission. So all these are then also the committee reports.
Okay.
So what we have found is that the leadership gets quite an opportunity, because of course they're leaders, to serve on different committees, to speak a lot. And so sometimes in our research where we find that women, of course we have a small pool to look at for women. So when we find that women are not talking a lot of one of the things we want to see is women then in the leadership position. So we are really encouraged that we have a deputy majority leader. She was a bit quiet before, so we know that she cannot be quiet any longer because she is in a quite key role in Parliament. So we are expecting her to do really well, but then also to raise the profile of women. I also wanted to talk about Abantu for Development.
Sure.
They did a women in governance. In fact, it was, I think, women in politics, political parties, a scorecard. Going back, they started looking at 2004 data because that's when the Women's Manifesto came out. And generally, as we know, the numbers just sort of confirm what we know about the low numbers of women's representation. But most of the parties got, you get 1 or it's up to 4. 1 is the lowest. Most of the parties all got 1. The one party that got 2 was NPP. So the NPP just that's marginally better than the others historically. So we would actually urge them not to bring themselves down to 1. And so the appointment of the first woman chief of staff, we're encouraged. We want more. Wherever they have to go to maintain, to at least get to 3, they have to do. Because then they actually have set a record before, and they're doing a bit better. They should stick at it. and they should put women forward. So
and the women are there.
And the women are there.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, they are
they
there.
there?
Of course.
I really don't like when men ask that question because you guys only see yourselves. The women are there.
They're there. The thing is,
They are
those
very
that
much
have
there.
eyes see.
See,
And they're there. There are lots of women there willing to serve.
yeah,
So, when people ask, especially in Ghana,
yeah.
I go to a range of different meetings, different civil society organizations, academics, and there is a whole wealth of Ghanaian women who are intelligent, who are articulate, who are hardworking, that can do the job. It's not like finding gold dust.
Yes.
But will they put,
See,
Have you asked?
For instance, the boards. I think that President Akufo-Addo, I think that they are going to appoint loads of people.
Yeah.
So what we don't want to see is a board, say, and there are about 7 positions and 6 men and 1 woman. I don't know what. I just don't even go. I don't know what goes through people's minds when they do that. Just do that. It's wrong.
balance?
So balance, exactly. And there isn't, once you get to the board
I was
level.
thinking about the one woman being the balance.
Oh no, it's not. Once you get to the board level, then if you do 6 men and 1 woman, they were actually saying that in the sector there aren't many women, and there isn't. I don't know what sector in Ghana don't have enough women.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an opportunity for the administration to really go out on a limb and just do the right thing and achieve parity in the boards. We know that Ghanaian men are not yet over, consuming the entire power structure. Everything must be, but they're going to have to curb their excesses. And some people are going to have to sit at home and sit it out.
Well, I always tell my students, it's almost like, when you're teaching these things, there's a cake, and men are used to having, let's say, 99% of the cake. Yeah? So even, let's say, the 30% of the cake that we're advocating for in order to get more in the future, they think, no, it's somehow unfair. We need, we need that extra bit of cake, but it's not right. You're hindering yourself. So, I think there's still ample opportunity, in appointing heads of particular state institutions or state bodies. There's women there that can do the job.
And this is something that doesn't, they don't have money to do all the things. So this is an easy win. It doesn't cost you more, because if you put a man, they have to pay him anyway, and so you put a woman there. It's probably cheaper because maybe corruption may be down. I don't know.
I think so too. But realistically, are we there or another 20, 30 years? I mean, are we there?
We can get there if we want to.
We could get there in 2020 if we wanted to.
If we wanted to. I just think, people are like, oh, it takes time. But it takes initiative. Mm-hmm. It takes steps. We could be here in 20 years' time saying, are we ready yet? Scratching our head. At the beginning of this millennium, it was the same thing. We were having the same types of discussion. And look, we've not really gone that much further. So I think we're all getting a little bit sick of the rhetoric now. It's a case of let's just do it. Let's just be bold, and there's creative ways of bringing women on board. And if you do it in those kind of organizations, then you'll see, and then, places like Rwanda, they've got 50-50, and it was deliberate.
Senegal, when you mention Rwanda, people go like, oh, they went to war.
You hear things
Senegal in West Africa, our own sister country.
Mm-hmm.
Are doing much better, and it was a president who decided, I'm going to do this.
You see, we hear things like, oh, we haven't got time for experiments, and
how can it be an experiment?
Let's get the old guards in.
It's not an experiment.
That's why we are failing. Ghana is failing, and this is part of it. Me, if you invite me to an all-male panel, I want to go. I don't care who is there and who is talking, because I look at the panel, I'm like, it's not going to go anywhere, because it's not inclusive. And if you don't do inclusive things and you let people sit out and you don't involve them, it's not going to happen. So this is why we are, in part, why we are failing. We refuse to be inclusive. And if any society that refuses to be inclusive has problems for days and months and centuries.
Well, I guess if somebody is watching who's close to the president, he should.
The president knows this, but the president knows this very, very well. he should be bold. He should have courage of his convictions, because he has convictions. He shouldn't, succumb to the party ways and different factions. The women too, we are a bloc, and he should appoint women.
At which level?
All of it.
Hey.
All of it.
You don't want to be cheerleaders anymore.
No, why?
No.
What has that achieved? Exactly.
What has that
achieved for Ghana itself? Forget the women. For Ghana itself, what has that achieved?
And the funny thing is you realize when the leaders know, women are great mobilizers,
Yes.
they're resourceful.
Yes.
And on campaign trails, you never see campaign trails without women.
Yeah.
Because they know what we can bring. The same way we can bring it to all levels.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? I promised you a good show, and I'm sure I did not let you down. Well, with me in the studio is Dr. Jemima Lulu, Head Center for Management and Development Studies in Gimpa Business School. You're welcome. And Kina Likimani, who's a project head and lead for Ghana Decides, and also a member of the Women's Manifesto Coalition. My name is Anansa Kwado. But every day I give you this number, so you should be writing, you should be memorizing this number by now. It's 024 366 2001. 024 366 2001. They make my shirts for the show, so give them a call and they make you a nice one, Tanti's Fashions. But ladies, thank you very much. And to you at home, tomorrow we're back to do this all over again. Thank you for watching. It was exciting.